Guys, I'm wondering, have you ever used a scream in your productions? Well, I'm not talking about like screaming, but rather it's a kind of sound that you can use, and it's specifically used in hard techno and all those kind of styles. And in this video, we're gonna have a look at Alignment and his track Close Your Eyes, and how he's using screams there to create just an intense apocalyptic atmosphere. Let's go.
Close your eyes. Close your eyes.
So this is the follow-up video to last week's kick and bass like alignment tutorial. In this video I want to specifically talk about the scream sounds that you've been hearing, and as you might know, the track Close Your Eyes by Alignment released on Context. This is kind of a recreation. I have to say though, those screams are really one of a kind, and it was more about kind of showing you the general way of how to work with those screams. So we're gonna go through them. They're all kind of similar, those three tracks, and we're gonna look at the subtle differences and how they are used in his track, how the notes are changing just a little bit to make everything feel very, very, very interesting. So let's start. We have three of those screams, and I want to start with the first one, and we're gonna have a listen in solo. So you can hear already it's only repeating, and it is layered with the second one here, which is just a little bit lower. And let's have a look at the preset. So how do those screams work? So in general, you can have sort of any source for oscillators. I chose to go for saw waves that are synced just a little bit because I wanted more overtones. It was not so easy to find the exact overtones, and like kind of pitching with the sound in general is not so easy. But let's go over the main components of such a scream. So first of all, we have the oscillators, of course. Those can really vary. It really depends on kind of the texture and sound design structure that you want to have for your scream. One of the elements that I thought are very useful, but might not be used always because they also change the sound quite heavily, is this pitch envelope. So you can see envelope 3 here is very, very short and applied to the pitch of both the oscillator A and B. And it's only 57 milliseconds, but if I disable them, like this, it gets this kind of very, very, very untuned feeling. No real tune anymore to the sound. And I really like this. At the same time, I think you can mix this up. So make sure to go follow the link in the description to get the presets for free. Just download them and check it out like this. So next up, this envelope 1, I put it very low because I'm using a lot of distortion and I didn't want the sound to blow up that much, especially because there's so many short notes, right? So envelope 1 is also very plucky, but still those 72 milliseconds get completely distorted. So this is why it's kind of working out. And then we have a lot of effects this time, and let's just disable them all for a moment. So this is what's happening here. We go from here. We started here. And now it's very important to understand what's happening. So first of all, we have this distortion diode 2. Completely distorting and compressing the sound, right? It was just a pluck, a very short pluck. And now it's just something very like sustained and kind of sounding broken already. And next up is the filter, and I've used this filter instead of the filter here in the oscillator section, essentially because I wanted to route it behind the distortion. So if I had, you can see it's already open here, the Scream low pass, but if it's before the distortion, it just has a different effect. So I think there's different ways to approach this, right? You could also don't distort and then have a lot of sustain and then use the Scream and then maybe just use a little bit of saturation instead of this very heavy distortion mode. But, you know, there's always many ways. How do you say? Many ways lead to Rome. At least that's a German saying. Let me know if that exists in your language as well. Anyway, we have the Scream low pass, and I want to show you what this looks like though. It looks something like this. Is this kind of the same settings? Yeah, kind of like this. And this is looking very weird, admittedly. So it's fair to say that this completely changes the texture of the sound. And, you know, with this boost somewhere around here, you kind of completely mess up the like tonal structure, and then you create this screaming high-end texture. So those Scream filters, they even work better on lower sounds because there's more like closer harmonics to work with. But still, for this sound, it works very well. We have an EQ behind to cut away all the unnecessary low end that we stacked up with the distortion and the filter. Some OTT to make the sound plucky again. So if you remember last week's video, I talked the whole time about adding something and taking something back away. Adding something, taking something away. Adding something, taking something away. So it's kind of the same workflow here. We're adding a lot and now we're taking it away again a little bit. The sustain, right? The very loud sustain to get a little bit more of a plucky sound. Then, same as last week also, harsh effect on the delay. Please click this video if you don't know about this. Essentially what this is doing is it's creating a super wide sound. Instead of being mono, it's completely stereo, right? And lastly, just a little bit of reverb. You can already hear that there's more reverb. It's here on the group, but we will talk about this in a minute. And this is how the first Scream is done. So the second one is kind of a replica, right? We have almost the same settings here. We have a different clipping, like a different distortion, which is interesting. And we don't use this widening effect, right? The delay, also no OTT. Let's compare the two sounds. So essentially just a lower version, but this time what I've done is I've used a very, very low saw wave. Sounds like this. And yeah, adding all those effects turns it into something like this. As I said, download the presets to have a deeper insight and to understand what's happening here. So the next one we have to talk about is this one. It's a bit of a different sound. Still, it's kind of a scream, and still there's the scream used for it. But this time, it's kind of a combination of both. And this is also because it's supposed to have both elements, right? Like it has to have some high frequencies and some like weirdness, but it also has to have some lower frequencies and some power to it, some body, right? So also, essentially, because you can download those three, already you can have a different kind of palette of sounds for screams, and you can adjust them just a little bit, and you can use them for your tracks very easily. So this time I used some FM, like frequency modulation, right? The sub-oscillator sine wave on -2 modulates this, the saw wave here on oscillator A to create some very, very textured sound just from the get-go. And I've added this higher synced saw wave for some more higher texture, like a bit more tonal texture, you could argue. And then, once again, very heavy distortion, scream, low pass, once again, the EQ, the compressor, and a little bit of reverb. It's also not stereo this time. And the goal was just to make it sound even more aggressive, because it's mainly used for those breaks here.
Close your eyes.
So we needed something very, very harsh here. So now what's interesting, if you look at this, maybe you remember from last week that the bass line does this +1 step, right? Like every end of 4 bars. And there's something similar happening in the screams, actually, because if you look at this, those are on D sharp, which is the key of the track. But the second combination, right? So first of all, we combine high 1 and 2 here. And next up, we combine the high 2 and dark. And they are on the E, right? So also on the +1, which is very interesting. So basically, we switch from +1 to 0 to +1 to 0, like from in the scale of D sharp minor. And yeah, this is a very common technique. I talked about this on the channel already quite some times. The +1 is usually not in the normal minor scale, and therefore it creates a very tense feeling. It's also sounding very dark, very tense, and yeah, it's perfect for techno, especially for hard techno like this on 150 BPM. So yeah, this is how they all work together. We have a little shaker layer here in the same rhythm, but always with 16th notes, right? Not 8th. And this is just to support the sound a little bit. And in the original track, there's probably even a bit more going on, but as I said, I really just want to show you the workflow of how to get those screams, so you can work with them on your own, because we don't want to rebuild people, right? We rather want to learn from them and then evolve it into our own sound. So what we can also have a look at real quick, first of all, the voice sample.
Close your eyes.
It's from Splice. If you don't know it, you should type in "close your eyes" and you will find it. Then we have a reverse cymbal, nothing special here. I just made it super, super noisy. And we have a reverse kick and this pitch sound here.
Close your eyes.
And this is it on the FX here already. If you want to know more about all this, how it worked, the whole session, right? Like the tops, the group processing and all that, make sure to check out our mentorship. You can check it out up here. It's basically, we have a community of people and everybody's producing music there, and we have some mentors like me, for example, in the group that you can reach out to if you're part of the community, and send us your tracks for feedback, ask questions and all that. There's weekly goodies, working together with the YouTube. So this week on YouTube, for example, we have how to sound like alignment, right? So if you're part of the mentorship, you can just download the full Ableton session and check it all out for yourself and try to use the sounds in your own way, right? So make sure to check that out if you want to. So what do you think, guys? Should we do a little bit more of this hard techno content on the channel? Let us know in the comments. As always, we are very, very happy and open for your suggestions. Otherwise, I would say have a good time, download the presets and play with them, and keep making music.